Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our presentation, webinar, and just informal chat this evening on the rewards of being an editor. We're going to give just a minute for other attendees to pile in. If you would sit tight with us, we'll get started in just a moment. All right, colleagues, we'll go ahead and get started this evening. My name is Chad Morris. I am the chair of the SfAA Publications Committee, and I'm very pleased tonight to bring you our webinar on the rewards of being an editor. We have panelists tonight who are experts in the editorial process at SfAA and our various journals. They are, in fact, among our current editors and editorial staff. Our goal this evening is simple. It's to let you know a little bit more about what it takes, what is involved in editing an academic journal, whether for SfAA or for another academic institution. The reality is that this is a job that is very important in obviously furthering the good work that we do in anthropology. But the more that we want to get the idea of applied anthropology out there as a global society, the better job we should do of preparing our membership for the task ahead, should they wish to be a journal or newsletter editor. So our goal tonight is to have an informal discussion. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists, who will each spend a few minutes sharing with you some of their thoughts about both the joys and some of the difficulties of serving as a journal or newsletter editor. And then the fun part comes. We open it up to your questions. We envision a nice roundtable format to our conversation this evening. And along those lines, you're absolutely welcome, while we are ongoing, to place questions in the chat box. Quinn Houlihan of Purdue University is our SfAA Publications Committee student representative and our current SfAA Pro Publications Committee intern, and Quinn is going to compile those questions and begin asking them after the presentations. Also, after the presentations, you will be welcome, of course, to ask questions individually simply by using the raise hand function in Zoom. So let me begin with some introductions this evening. I will start by introducing the editors and editorial assistant for Human Organization. Human Organization is the Society's peer-reviewed publication. It is a publication that it publishes articles that advance, synthesize, and interpret the application of anthropological method and theory to practical problems in the contemporary world pertaining to applied social science. Nancy Romero-Daza and David Himmelgreen of the University of South Florida are the co-editors of that publication, and Devin Gray may be joining us as well as the editorial assistant for that publication. The second group of folks here tonight is from Practicing Anthropology. PA is our editor-reviewed journal that publishes work on the usefulness of anthropology in the world through case studies, toolkits, policy briefs, creative work, dialogues, and other content of interest in practicing social science. Published work in print with companion multimedia on the Practicing Anthropology blog is also an available part of what PA does. This evening, Lisa Hardy and Caroline Mendy are here. Lisa is the editor of Practicing Anthropology, and Caroline serves as editorial assistant. And then finally, Mike Whiteford used to call it the flagship of the Society for Applied Anthropology. The SfAA Newsletter is capably edited by Orit Tamir of New Mexico Highlands University and by Jean Simonelli. Orit and Jean publish updates from the board and our committees and topical interest groups, short interviews with social scientists, activists, and community leaders, brief reports from members in the field, and stories of public engagement, all in the newsletter. I'm going to begin tonight by asking Nancy and David to kick us off by talking about their thoughts on serving as a journal editor. They have ample experience along those lines, and I would be remiss if I did not mention the fact that we are also having David and Nancy. We're very grateful as an institution that the two of them have agreed to extend their editorship through the end of this coming year of HO, but we are actively seeking editors of HO as well. And so there's a shameless plug involved in some of the work that we're doing tonight. But importantly, for those of you watching, we also want to make sure that folks are thinking not only in the short term about being editors, but in the long term as well. Nancy, if you would get us started, please.
Yes, thank you and welcome everyone. We hope that this is a conversation that will allow us to, just exchange ideas, as Chad said. We wanted to use, each one of us will use a few minutes just to talk about some of the rewards from our point of view of being editors. So from the point of view of one of the editors in human organization, I think one of the most rewarding things for me personally is the fact that we have kind of the possibility, the opportunity to kind of set an agenda as to, what topics need to be highlighted or what scope of, what issues are of importance. And I'll give you just two examples. Obviously, because we're in the midst of a global pandemic, a lot of disciplines, including anthropology, did a lot of work and engaged very quickly in trying to figure, the impact of this pandemic on every aspect of our life. And in terms of HO, we were lucky to be able to really highlight the wonderful work that our colleagues from international and domestic spheres working in interdisciplinary teams have done in terms of COVID. And we were able to, in December last year, December 2020, we were able to publish our first COVID-19 special issue. And it really highlighted, as I said, the work of a lot of people in different arenas. And then this year, just last week, we published the second special issue on COVID-19. And I think those two really, really highlight the value of our discipline as applied anthropologists responding to a global pandemic. So obviously that was very prominent, and that's a decision that we made about, we have to highlight this work through special issues. Another example of how we kind of have the opportunity to kind of set certain paths is we have always wanted to expand the scope of human organization to really give voice, especially to colleagues from the Global South. And one of the initiatives, again, one of the things that we have done to do that is through special issues. For example, right now we're working with Judith Friedenberg on an issue that is going to be published in June next year. And it's on applied anthropology in Latin America. And this issue will bring together, I think it's about 16 colleagues from 7 or 8 Latin American countries. And it not only highlights the very important work that they're doing in terms of application of real application to different issues like migration, forensics, cases, development, education, but it also, I think, the way that we're presenting, that we're constructing this issue, really puts us in the context of historical developments and relationships between anthropology of the North and the South. And again, it's something that we wanted to do to really, really highlight different anthropologies that we find in the hemisphere, in the Americas. And, following along that, just this morning, David and I talked to another colleague who wants to propose an issue that brings together the work of anthropologists on 6 different projects related to development in India. And I think, that again, we want to emphasize obviously the applicability, but also at the same time, the theory behind this and the theoretical and applied implications, but more important, to give voice and to give the platform for our colleagues, researcher, practitioners from the Global South to highlight, to produce their work. So I think I'm going to stop there. David is going to talk about some of the challenges, but I know I have exceeded my time. So thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Good evening, everyone. Before I get to the challenges, I just want to quickly talk about some of the rewards as well. And in addition to what Nancy said in terms of leaving your mark and setting a direction, you know, there are other things that that have been personally very rewarding for me. One thing is to be able to keep up with the literature. So you see everything that comes through, and you know, that's good. It's we have so much going on in our lives that it's sometimes we fall behind. And I think as an editor, you get to keep up with the cutting edge research. Another thing is really helping students and newer practitioners and academics to get published. I was chair of my department for 6 years, and you know, tenure and promotion was a really big thing there, and of course getting published. So it's just nice to work with a wider audience of folks who you know, want to publish, get their research out there, but also it's important for you know, their careers moving forward. So that's been really rewarding. It also increases, I think, the visibility of one's department or wherever if that person is working for an agency or organization, as well as you know, in the university as well, if you're an academic. So I'll spend the rest of my time just talking about some of the challenges, and this is not to scare people away from being editors, but just to, you know, to be frank about what, you know, some of the issues are, and thinking about ways of you know, improving the situation. So, you know, I've been an editor for 3 different journals, and with all of them, one of the, I think the biggest challenges is the review process itself. It seems to me increasingly it's hard to get folks to review papers, and even when they agree to review, to get those reviews in a timely fashion. So that's always a bit of a challenge, and that's one of the reasons that Nancy and I always ask the authors of papers to give us a list of 3 to 5 prospective reviewers that we reach out to. But there have been cases, and you know, where we reach out 10, 12 or more reviewers before we get 2 or 3 to agree to do a review. So that's, you know, an ongoing issue. A second thing is getting timely revisions back from the authors. We do set deadlines. We understand people are really busy, and you know, but we do have, you know, very tight timelines to get out issues, and it really is important to get those papers back in through the review process, get the proofs back out and the corrected proofs back in, so we can go to publication. I think for HO, a discussion, a third thing that's come up more recently is you know, the need for more early access to papers. Sometimes it can take 6 months or a year to get a paper published, depending on, again, on the review process and the revision process. And more and more, I know that journals are giving early view to articles, and I think this is something that at HO and in the society in general, I think we're focusing more on what can we do in the future to give to have early view. So we, you know, it's really important in terms of you know, again, the timeliness of the topic and getting it out there to the wider audience, but also going back to what I said before, you know, there are folks that need these publications in order to get tenure or to be promoted or to get an increase or whatever it may be. So that's something I'm looking forward to in HO and in the future, early view. I think we're doing a pretty good job, as Nancy said, in terms of getting more submissions from our international colleagues. But I think we could do better. I think it's really important to reach out to the global South and throughout the world to get submissions. Occasionally, there are issues around language and editing that slow down the process, but we try to work very closely with the authors to make sure that the articles are polished and ready to go. And I know there's also been some discussion, for example, of translating at least the abstracts into a second language, and that's really important as well. Fifthly, there's a lot of competition out there. There are a lot of journals, and they have good visibility. I think HO is a flagship journal for the society. It's been around a long time. But we've been talking about ways to increase our visibility, to increase, for example, our impact factors. We need, I think, to do that, and to let the wider world know that HO is a good journal to submit their applied work to. Increasingly, I'm at a pretty large university, and we have lots of different colleges, and I meet colleagues in other colleges like public health, and who are publishing very anthropological research or using our methods and approaches, which is kudos to us, and that's great. But it would be nice to get more of them to publish in a journal like HO as well. So we're trying to reach out to more of our colleagues from other related disciplines. So I think I'm going to stop there, and we can get more into it during the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy and David. Appreciate that very much. We're going to move on to practicing anthropology and Lisa Jane Hart.
Hi, I am looking forward to the question and answer part, because then I'll be able to see everyone. So I don't know, we can only see the panelists. I don't know who's actually here. So we'll invite you to ask questions, but both Nancy and David covered a lot of what I would say also. So I'll just be quick, and then hopefully we'll have more discussion during the question and answer. I love being an editor. I'm in my 4th year, so 2nd term of editing. Practicing anthropology. Practicing anthropology is editor reviewed, not peer reviewed. And so what that means is, if you're in a tenure track job at a competitive research one institution, you probably will be looking for peer reviewed publications for your portfolio. However, the benefits of publishing with practicing anthro, and sometimes people will publish with both. So a more research focused, longer grounded article in HO, and then for practicing anthro, a kind of dispatch from the field type of article. Our articles are shorter, 3,500 to 4,000 words. They are written by many different people positioned inside and outside of university. We have at one point I looked through, and maybe half of each issue is practitioners or people not within the university. So it's a really nice place to have conversations with people practicing social science all over the world, and all over in terms of what our backgrounds are and what our work is. So for me, connecting with these different authors, also, like Nancy said, kind of helping to shape the discussion and bring visibility to the really cool work that social scientists are doing. I really think that some of us in Anthro just have wonderful ideas, wonderful research, wonderful work. And so this is a nice way to not only find out what people submit to us, but also to reach out and say, hey, you're doing something really great. Would you consider writing something for practicing anthro? So I love that part of this. It's been great to work with the other editors. I find this community here that you see on the screen really a lovely group of people to work with. And it's nice to have to grow my own community in that way, and to grow the community of our authors as they publish with us in issues and become connected to one another. So those are some of the things I love about it. Being able to mentor people who have never published before. We had an issue where we had a very well-known senior anthropologist in the field, and right next to that article was an indigenous young climate activist, one in high school and one in early college, both writing back to back next to each other. And so that's another thing that I love about practicing anthropology. It's a great place for diversity and inclusion, being able to solicit and mentor people who maybe don't know how to write an article, and we can work with them over a period of different, sometimes people just say, hey, I'm thinking about writing this. And then we'll have a conversation back and forth, and we can help to craft it into something that our readers would want. When we say editor reviewed, that doesn't mean that I'm the only one who reads it. We also have an editorial team. So I'll often send out articles for review, a kind of informal review to our editorial team. And this is another community of people who are working together to publish, to find cool stuff to publish, and to connect with us. I would say, oh, and we also have opened a creative section, and we've been doing this for about 3.5 years. We have some first person narratives, some visual art. We have linked podcasts to our blog, things like that. So we really want to keep on the kind of edge of what people are doing when it comes to these multimedia forms and also creative forms of what social scientists do in the world. I'm just going to say one challenge right now, and then we can talk more about that. But I think the biggest challenge is just that it's very time consuming. I have a wonderful editorial assistant now, and I had who is here with us today, Caroline Mendy. And then I had one before that who is also wonderful. My university covers that, and sometimes in the summer I don't have an editorial assistant. Sometimes there's a lot of time goes into this. My university, I get one course release, but this is an all year, summer, vacations, all the time kind of job. So that is a very realistic part of serving as an editor. For me, it's worth it. I can't say there aren't, every once in a while I feel a little like, I need a little more, especially when the editorial assistants are not funded like over the summer. However, the benefits really far outweigh those kinds of stresses for me personally. And so if you're thinking about serving in this role, it's really worthwhile to think about the benefits and whether or not they do outweigh the amount of work and the time commitment and just the kind of personal commitment to the job. So that's all I'll say for now. But again, I will look forward to seeing everybody on Zoom so that we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate that. Caroline, what would you like to add from your experience?
Hi, everyone. So I've been in this role for, I think, about 3 months. I'm still pretty new. But one of the things that I really liked about it so far is a lot of the learning opportunities. Like everyone else has said, we get to see a lot of pieces come in that we might not see otherwise, and getting to learn from those. I definitely think it's an opportunity as a student to work on my writing and editing skills. It's also been fun to talk about the role with other students and just give them an idea of what I'm working on, and they can see opportunities that they might be able to publish that they might not see otherwise. So I think that it's a nice opportunity to kind of advocate for other people. It's, again, yeah, I think a lot of this is coming from my perspective as a student, since it is my GA-ship to work on the journal. It's giving me a lot of exposure to other people in the field, a lot of research that I wouldn't see otherwise, and learning more about the publishing world, which I was not familiar with prior to this. And then for challenges, I think the time commitment definitely, as with all things, it takes a lot of time. But it's, as Lisa said, definitely still worth it.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I appreciate that. Now, perhaps as a nice bridge between PA and the newsletter, Jean Simonelli has served as PA editor as well in the past, but currently is co-editor of our newsletter, and we're pleased she was able to be with us tonight. Jean, what would you like to share?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Driving from Tucson to Bisbee right now. Just got off a plane. I want to certainly echo everything that Lisa said about PA. It is a wonderful place to mentor people as they hone their writing skills. And it is something that I enjoyed immensely. I did it for 6 years. But one of the things that I did have when I was editing PA and also with the newsletter is a co-editor. And Lisa's probably the only one who doesn't have a co-editor. So if at any point you are interested in one of these positions, find somebody who's a good friend and or maybe not a good friend, somebody you know from the meetings, and not necessarily somebody that has to be at your university or at your agency, and work together, because it really, really lightens the load. So now going to the newsletter, Orit and I have, we have to encourage people to submit, and please, if there's anything that strikes you, please do submit 4 times a year. But we have been working with students on some of their first published pieces, and we take about a 5 or 6 page piece from them, and it is really great to work with students and see what they're doing, because particularly even undergrads are doing so much more than you used to do in the past. So that's one of the good things that the newsletter does. Just editing, and for me, I love editing. I have a heavy pencil. I don't like convoluted writing, and that was one of the joys, was taking jargon-filled convoluted writing and turning it into something readable with PA and also the newsletter. But the mentoring process is wonderful. And for my assistants in PA, who were all undergrads, they got an incredible experience out of the editorial assistant's position. And I can tell you that they went on to get great scholarships for graduate school. And one of the main things was the fact that they had put in 2 years as editorial assistant for PA. So I do encourage people to get involved, and not just academics. And having worked for the last 6 or 7 years as a practitioner for the National Park Service, and that's a minimum wage practitioner for the National Park Service, I know that it's not something that's encouraged, writing or any kind of academic related topic, but people should write about what they see, and perhaps begin with PA's non-academic focused, more creative focused pieces and work from there. So that's all I have to say. I'm passing big trucks, so I'll pass this to Ari.
Thank you. So hello, everybody. So to follow up on what Jean just said, we're actually a pretty good example. Jean and I met at the SfAA when I assisted her when she chaired the conference in my hometown, Santa Fe. I was looped into actually getting a lot of work done during the SfAA by the late Tom May. First, during the 2005 meeting that in Santa Fe, where I live, that Irv Chambers chaired, and later I find myself chairing the conferences 2.5, 3 times, I guess, formally. That said, with this little bit of a background, I find serving in the SfAA to be really fulfilling. And being engaged is really important. As a co-editor of the news, I feel that we have, that I have my finger on the pulse of what's going on instantaneously in the association. We get news from the topical interest groups. We get news from different members, and one of our objectives that Jean already alluded to is to get students engaged, undergraduate and graduate. And we started having this short essays published about ongoing research that opened the door also for students. For many of them, this is their first time ever published, and helping them out and mentoring them during the process is really fulfilling. It's something that to me personally is very important. I received a lot of help when I was a graduate student, a foreign graduate student in this country, and I find it very, very fulfilling. Some of the challenges that we face is getting material in. When we send out a call for submissions, we normally sit on our hands for a couple of weeks, and then on the last minute, there is a barrage of submissions. We would like to get more submissions. We would like to know more about what you are doing. I came to academia after 7 years of practicing cultural resource management, as being one of the few cultural anthropologists who are doing CRM. And I'm now trying very, very hard to bring more people from that particular field that is pure applied to the SfAA. And it's not easy, but I'm trying, we are trying. And I think that's about it. For just to sum up, the news is not as nearly as structured as human organization and practicing anthropology. So if you have something, send it. If you have news about a new book, a new film, about ongoing research project, something that you would like to share with the membership, please send it to us. And if we need you to make some edits and adjustments, we'll let you know very quickly. Both of us are very good, I think, at replying to people very, very quickly. So we encourage you to submit whatever you have. We don't have strict guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our panelists. Appreciate those good ideas and thoughts, reflections on service as an editor, as we appreciate, of course, your service to the society. It is a large one and a tireless one, and so we're grateful for that. Friends, by my estimation, our questions exist in 3 places right now. They're in the chat, they're in a Q&A box, and they're in your minds. And so Quinn Houlihan from Purdue is going to moderate the asking of these questions by sharing some of the questions with us for our panelists to discuss. If you have a question you would like to share with us in person, and we hope you do, simply use that raise hand button there at the bottom of your screen, and Quinn will call on you in due course as well. So Quinn, if you'd get us started.
Sure. I am going to go ahead and start with one of the first questions that came through the Q&A, and this is from Adam. What does an editor do if there are not enough submissions for a given issue, or if the quality is sufficient, or the quantity is sufficient, but the quality is not? Are there articles on the back burner that one can pull out at the last minute? And does the editor solicit invited contribution from a senior scholar to fill the gap, or something else?
This is Lisa. We've done all of those things, and we have been in that situation. I think before I became an editor, I thought that the role would mean we would have a plethora of submissions and we would carefully curate from this giant collection. And it has been, especially during COVID, people weren't writing, they weren't submitting as much. We have had some times when we have had to solicit. I would say not necessarily from senior, sometimes from senior people, but as far as PA goes, we really just look for people doing interesting work, no matter what part of their career they're in. And we have had to go out and say, there has been once or twice where I've had to go out and say, hey, I need something and I need it now. So unfortunately, that is true. But I think it's also important to know that, because all of you who might not be submitting your work because for whatever reason, please do submit. It's always good to submit, and it helps us as editors to have a wider range of work to select from and to collect different issues that articles that go together. So, but yeah, that's a really good question, and it does happen.
Can I add a little bit from human organization? Unfortunately, we have not had the fortune of having, a repository where we could select articles. We have a lot of articles that are in process. And one of the other challenges that we oftentimes face is the fact that once we give authors our reviews or the reviews from the external reviewers, some people never return their revised manuscripts. So the article will be in limbo for a long, long time. So when we look at what we have articles, manuscripts at very different stages in the process. Some of them are waiting for reviews. Some of them are waiting for, the revised manuscripts to be sent back from authors. So, so we don't have that. We have been fortunate that we have had enough. But as Lisa mentioned, we have experienced it in submissions, and I think there are lots and lots of issues that may account for this, including, I think Adam in another question or somebody else in another question raised the issue of there are so many journals out there that are really competing with us and actually kind of producing things very, very quickly. I was amazed to see the other day, sometimes articles that are published, it says submitted such and such date, accepted such and such date. I saw something that was like literally like a week. And I'm thinking, no, how can you do peer reviewed in a week? That's supposed to be a peer reviewed journal. So I don't know if David or anybody else wants to add, but I know that's a really good question, but it really brings up issues of, kind of, the long process and that it's involved and issues of competition, issues of, people may go to places that, have a quicker turnaround.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think there is increasing competition out there. There are more journals that are, for example, publishing applied anthropology or other types of applied social sciences. I think Nancy's point about the early turnaround is really important for a lot of folks. They don't want to wait forever to get published, and it is sometimes scary to see papers that are submitted and within a month there's an early view publication of them. That's something that I think HO wants to work on. I think we're pretty good at it, but turning things around. But there are other journals that are much quicker. So I think we can aim for something like that as well.
One of the things that I know that young authors face is they send in their first article and it comes back with comments from the reviewers and they just freeze. Oh my God, they didn't like it. And that's not the case. Reviewers are trying to be helpful most of the time. So we had to sometimes encourage authors and make it our business to say, do the revision, respond to whatever the comment is, and just when you send it back, say, in response to comment number 7, here's what I did, because that's a reason that you never see an article once it's been reviewed by reviewers. They just freeze and are frightened.
Yeah. If I could just add something, I think Jeannie makes a really good point about taking the feedback not as a rejection, but as we want this to be the best paper it can be. One thing I think that I do, and I know Nancy does as well, is even with really tough reviews, we try to be as kind as possible and as encouraging as possible. Unless there is an outright rejection. And even then, we may have suggestions on, revising and submitting it as a new paper or suggest other journals. So, it's, you can't have a thick skin You can't have be thin-skinned, but also it really is helpful, especially for our younger colleagues, to be as supportive as possible to them and encourage them.
All right, several questions and a hand up. Quinn, what's next?
Actually, I'm sorry, could I comment on that last bit? I have no idea who's on the call or.
Go right ahead.
Okay. But I just wanted to add sort of some color commentary and then a question. So as somebody who has gotten really nasty reviews in the past when I was in an academic position, it is really hard to get those, and not every editor is as kind as you guys all seem to be in taking it seriously to sort of mentor younger academics. And I'm no longer in academia, but I like writing. I don't do much of it anymore, and I'm not sure that anything that I'm working on I can write about. But I wonder if as an organization, we've ever thought about having mentors for those people who might be very early career. You know, I know that an editor doesn't have the time to really help you make sense of those blind reviews, and blind reviews should stay blind. But what about, you know, taking people who are fellows of the organization and recruiting some mentors to help with that turnaround? I'm not sure that I'm sort of up to speed enough to be reviewing, but I think mentoring younger academics is something that is manageable in the work that I do now, even though I'm removed from the academic work. So just a thought.
I think that's a wonderful point that you've raised, Catherine. And I think you're absolutely right. It's the idea of, you know, this is scary. And, you know, we have been on both sides of this game, and it is scary to get really nasty reviews. And if you don't have someone to guide you and to kind of encourage you to deal with that, to first process, you know, the criticism and then deal with, you know, address it, then you could be, you know, intimidated, and maybe, you know, a lot of people don't ever feel that they can publish. So I think I really like the idea of mentoring, as you suggest. But I think another thing that we're trying to do, and you know, among the different publications that, of the society, is to try to demystify the process of publication. And this is something that I think we're all very, very concerned and really concerned about, and really dedicated to the idea of we really have to do something to make sure that people, you know, see this process, are familiar with the process, and see that it's not such a threatening you know, thing, that, you know, that there's constructive criticism, that there is, you know, there is good in going through this process. But we are planning, and we plan, you know, things for, I think we have something planned for the meeting for next year, to really demystify this and kind of be more approachable to people, to try to you know, address these issues.
Yeah, I have a comment about that too. I think that that would be great to have that, especially with people going through peer review. I do think that we've had a Q&A on Twitter, how to publish, answer questions. And I think at PA we do that. So we have very long conversations over months with authors who send something in that might not be publishable at all. And we work with them over time to get it in shape. But what your comment is making me think about, Catherine, is that we don't necessarily advertise that we do that. So maybe we also need to make that a little bit more well-known, that it is a place where people can submit their work before they know how to do it, and that we'll work with them closely.
Okay, and then Lenore made a comment or a question about what are the challenges that you all are facing with the increasing move to online and open access?
May I comment here? So actually for the news, this has been a blessing that we moved to online. So we are basically, I would say, very different than HO and practicing anthropology. the news moved online a few years ago, which enables us to receive essays and pictures and graphics that otherwise we would have been very limited in receiving, and also make sometimes quick corrections, so edits after the news went live. So for us, this actually has been a blessing. This is, but we're very different again because we edit the news, not scientific articles. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the news is actually open access anyway, such as it is. But so for us, it's been quite a blessing. Yeah, to be able to bring literally color to the screen with graphics and pictures.
PA has a blog, so we've used it in that way, but that's not enough. And so Lenore's question also relates to Adam's question as well, like the proliferation of new journals, some of them of questionable repute. Also the fact that during COVID, a lot of journals opened up these sort of rapid dispatches kind of articles that sort of PAs, that's what we do. And that's what we've been doing for a long time. And so one of the things I think we are in a place of visualizing new ways of doing things. We can't be open access yet. We don't want our authors to have to pay a lot of money to publish with us, but it is also a problem that we're not open access, because that means that if you don't have a membership or an institutional affiliation, it's sometimes difficult to get our articles. So we're always thinking about this, but I would say it's in process. And we have a new committee and a new group of people who are working on this, Lenore included, who have a lot of experience and who are looking at the present moment and trying to figure out how we can meet those challenges given our available resources.
Yeah, and I think for ASHO, it really has been, kind of unfortunate that, that there is so much proliferation of these other online journals that produce things so quickly. I think it probably has reduced the number of submissions that we get, because obviously nobody wants to wait a long time for their articles to be published. This is why we're having these discussions about how to move forward and how to make sure that we continue doing very strict peer reviewed, but at the same time kind of responding to the needs of people, especially those in tenure track positions or people who really do need to have these publications out in a quick fashion. So but I think it has hurt us, definitely.
Okay, so I have another question from Adam in the Q&A. What are the minimum qualifications to be an editor, and must one have published a minimum number of times in a journal in order to qualify as an editor of that same publication?
Maybe
Yeah, I think that,
Michael, or I don't know if Michael, Pauliso, or Chad want to take this one on from your perspective.
I can, David, you had a thought as well. Michael, go ahead.
I was just typing a question in the chat, so I wasn't listening. That's pretty embarrassing. Could you repeat the question?
We wanted to know your perspectives on the entirety of the future of SfAA over the next decade. No, I'm kidding. It was a question about how editors are selected and what are minimum qualifications to be an editor.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I think it's varied each time we've selected editors over the years, but in general, they've been members of the society for some time and active in the society, that they bring different perspectives, maybe from previous editors, that they have familiarity with the journals. It's been essential that they've been able to muster support from their institutions. So that's made it difficult for practitioners, for example, versus but I think, somebody that has this experience and skills and time in order to invest in crafting and honing and nurturing the publication, because as I listen to all of you talk, it's clear it's a lot of work. It's also clear that you enjoy it and it's meaningful to you, and it's worth the effort most of the time, I'm sure. So that's, I think, some of the general qualifications.
Yeah, if I may add something too, Michael mentioned support for academics, support from their institutions, and I think that is increasingly becoming an issue, especially with at public institutions where state legislatures are giving less and less money to colleges and universities. So I know, for example, a while ago, there was another HO editor from our department, and the university was able to provide a lot more support. It was probably 20, 25 years ago. When Nancy and I became editors for the journal, we had some support from our college. And then it kind of shifted to the department, and more recently, because of budget crunches, we're getting less and less now. So that's something I think we have to figure out as an organization as well. How do we provide the financial and other support to the editors in order for them to be successful?
One of the other things, you could have been a really active member for your entire academic career, but you sure don't want to apply to be an editor before you get tenure, just because the process is so intense, the tenure process, and it's not a good thing to do concurrent with getting tenure.
If that is, you're applying to be an editor out of an academic organization.
Right, out of an academic organization, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say that we have had the previous editors of PA, there was one practitioner and one academic. That works really well too. And if you're here and you're a practitioner and not in the academic world, we've been talking about the academically positioned potential editors, but we really like the idea of also people maybe in partnership or, apply if you're interested in editing. Even if you're a practitioner, you don't have to be within an institutional setting.
Absolutely. It seems to me, having served on a few of the selection committees, that a solid vision for the journal is incredibly important. I don't remember ever counting how many articles a person had published in a particular journal that they wanted to edit. It's a vision for the journal, and it's a willingness to bring one's own networks to bear, and then do some of the good footwork that these editors have talked about in generating productive scholarly conversations for the journal. That's what it boils down to. So those who are here tonight with interest in editing, short or long term, please feel free to reach out to any of us. And if your interest happens to be in contemplating the HO editorship, there is no direct link from reaching out and asking questions to "we're going to make you do it." So please feel free to ask those questions, and I'll be happy to talk a lot more about process, as will others. All right, Quinn, what have we next?
All right, so Ryan asked, on average, how many hours a week do you allocate to editing per week? And I know Lisa had answered that, but did anyone else want to jump in and give their opinion?
That's a really difficult one. It really depends on how much support do you have. So we are very lucky at HO to have a really, really good editorial assistant that works for us. Well, right now we only have, because we lost a little bit of support from the university, we only have this person for 5 hours a week, which is really not enough. But ideally, and in the past, we had him, when we had support from the university, we had him for 10 hours a week. And that still with that, him taking care of kind of the logistics of, receiving submissions and, finding reviewers and all that. Still, I think, I don't know, David, but, I think I will say like at least 2-3 hours a day. And I know it sounds like a lot, but yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a big commitment, but it really, as I said, that's what I do, for example, right now. But the more support you have with an editorial assistant, the lesser your load, I guess.
I don't know if it's still the case, Lisa, with PA, but there was a rhythm to it. So as it got closer to publication dates and getting it organized and laying it out and all of that sort of thing, you don't lay it out formally, but you do lay it out, that it would get busier towards the publication date, then it would slow down a little bit, and then it would get busy again.
Yeah, that's still the case. I would say it probably averages out to about 10 hours a week for me, the PA or the EA, 20 hours a week, not including vacations, because it's a GA on an academic schedule that Caroline is working, but 10 hours is the average. There are some weeks when PA is the majority of what I'm doing, and then other weeks when I only do a couple hours. But when it comes close to a deadline, there are some weeks when really everything else gets shoved aside for production. That's the way it works for me. I think that as an editor, it probably could be equaled out a little bit. People work in different ways. For me, there's usually a time at the end where it comes together and I see it, and then it's all this work. And I don't know, there may be other people who have a different rhythm where they could really make it 10 hours a week and not quite as unequal over the weeks. But for me, it does have a rhythm, but that doesn't mean that there are any, most of the time there's work to do.
All right, there's another question in the question answer from Adam. What has been the impact of the proliferation of new journals these days, some of them of questionable repute? Has it kept pace with the production of new anthropologists, exceeded the pace, or lagged behind it? In other words, are more people than ever before submitting to SfAA publications, less or about the same as usual?
I think, at HO, we're seeing fewer submissions. Some of this could be attributed to COVID, but there has been a steady decline. And I think, as we were saying before, there is a lot more competition out there, and that might explain some of it. But I also suspect with the pandemic, just kind of slowed everyone down. One interesting point, though, is early on in the pandemic, I noticed anyhow that more people were willing to review papers. So we were getting less submissions, but more people were willing to review papers. But that seems to have turned around again, I guess, I'm not sure we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as far as the pandemic goes. But yeah, Nancy, I don't know. I mean, is that your sense too? Fewer submissions, and anybody else on the panel? We could see that we might see that across the publications.
I think so, yeah. Fewer submissions because of that, what we talked about, the proliferation of other journals, definitely fewer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we do some things to try to get around that end up being really interesting, like a Q&A. We have in the forthcoming issue, we have a Q&A with an acquisitions editor about what it takes to write in Anthro. And so we do some different things like that, but I'm always thinking about, why would someone want to write for our journal? What's the tangible reciprocity for them? Especially because we do want authors who are not all in academic, if you're in an academic world, then a publication means something. And so we try to think of different ways, like, for example, if we have a conversation and write the conversation down, instead of having someone take the time to write an article, how can we make this useful for practitioners and who don't have in their requirements to publish this kind of article. But I do think that the vision of what these journals can become, if we figure out how to make them open access, if we figure out how to make a couple of articles open access, that we're talking about a lot of these things. And I think that that may help, because right now someone can publish with us and not have a link to send around. They might have a link to the blog that has a companion blog article, but not necessarily a link to the article. So there are things we can do and we're working on them, but I do think it is a very real question of how we compete right now in a landscape where we've got a lot of open access, more visible journals doing what we've done for so long. One of the things I love about being the editor of PA is that it's been here for a lot longer than I have. And my job is just to serve on this sort of trajectory. And PA has been doing this kind of thing for a long time. And now it seems like everyone's doing it. So how do we keep relevant? And I think there are ways that set us apart, but we're also kind of always thinking about what we can do to become more and more relevant and continue in this competitive area.
Friends, there are several more questions, and I will certainly will entertain time to answer all of those as folks are able to remain. But we have been here for an hour, and so I wanted to offer a few remarks just quickly, and then those who would like to remain and are able to remain to continue the discussion are absolutely welcome to. I'm placing in the chat just a link and an email address. The link is to the Practicing Anthropology blog, and a helpful section there that breaks down our three journals and tells you a little bit more about them. That might be helpful for editorial purposes, but also very helpful for the contemplation of submissions. You're also more than welcome to reach out to these editors and let them know that you might be interested in reviewing submissions for that journal. And if you do that, please simply let them know what your areas of interest might be. You also have there my email address. As I said earlier this evening, the shameless plug is that we are currently seeking an editor for Human Organization. As you can tell, it is a big job. It involves creativity, but it also provides a lot of opportunity for reward. And so if you're interested in speaking more about that, I would encourage you to reach out to me, even if you just have some questions or just want to think it through or that sort of thing. I'm very, very happy to entertain early questions at this point as we undertake that search. So with that, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as I said, we'll continue with the questions, but you are free to depart as and when you wish. Quinn, what's next?
All right, so Kevin had a question. At what point do you give up on a reviewer and either bringing in a fourth or make a decision based on two?
Good question.
Well, Nancy, why don't you? Yeah, we were actually talking about this earlier before.
I think, we just, this is also part of why, it takes so much time and effort to put into this, all these little things, following up on people and making sure kind of at some point, just pushing but you have to have a balance on, how much do you ask for? How much, because we also have to remember that reviewers are doing this on a volunteer basis. So several emails, but the thing with this is you have to send the reminder and then wait a little bit and then send another reminder. It's just like, it's a very complicated and, situation, and it's not a good situation to be in when you have to bug people so much. So I would say after kind of three reminders, and sometimes people don't respond to your emails, then you move on. We have gone, but it's really frustrating to find those initial reviewers, as David says. Sometimes, there was a case where we went to actually like 25 people who we contacted to try to get reviewers. And then, what is even worse is when, people agree to review, but then you do not get that review again. So it's a very, it's a delicate situation, but, probably 3 times, and then, just we forget about that. And then what we do sometimes is we do not want to do just 2 reviews. Usually in that case, for example, if I'm working on that manuscript, then David will be able to read it and to serve as their external reviewer. So I don't know, it's case by case, but that's part of the real frustration of doing, this type of works.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question from Michael. How often does HO and PA publish special issues? What is the role of special issues now and in the future? And does a special issue have more impact?
Yeah, there's no set number of times that we do special issues, and there's nothing in any of the documentation about HO that suggests that you even have to do special issues. I think we're finding them actually really interesting to do. As Nancy was saying before, we did the first special issue on COVID. We got a huge number of submissions, and we could only, publish, I think it was 9 papers. And then I think we had close to 40 submissions for that. So we decided to do a second round, and sent those papers out for review. Some of the ones we're doing now, the one on Latin America, again, I think doing more in the global South, and the proposal from that group is really exciting. And I was actually just doing some research, and somebody had asked about impact factors before, and one suggestion for increasing an impact factor is doing special issues, doing things like more review papers and methods papers. Chances are you're going to get a lot more people wanting to read those articles, which and then maybe cite them, and that will increase the impact factor. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm really, it's been very nice focusing on some special issues now. But we also have to keep in mind that, we don't want to hold up the individually submitted papers. So sometimes, and I've done this in other journals too, where you'll combine, you might have a special issue that has 5 or 6 papers, and then do 2 individually submitted papers in an issue.
Yeah, for PA, I would say it's about the same. There was, when I first came on, we did a couple of special issues in a row, and the volunteered papers ended up getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And so I temporarily shut them down for a little while, but we're open for special issue pitches again. One special issue that we had, Susie Crate was the guest editor, and she put out a call, and we had submissions from all over the world, much more diversity of authorship than just for a regular open call. So I think that's one of the beautiful benefits of having a guest editor who's well-known in a field, a subfield, who can bring readership and authorship that we might not get with just an open call. So, I'd be excited to do more, but I think, like David said, I just kind of want to make sure not to do 2 in a row, and just kind of feel it out for who is proposing a special issue that's of interest to our readers, and mixing that up with the volunteered papers.
Yeah, and you also bring up another important point, Lisa, is the fact that when you do a special issue, you have help from the guest editor. And, that's really wonderful, because, as you say, they have their networks, they know, they are so invested, for example, in the topic, and they really know who's who in that area. So, they really are helpful in terms of, finding reviewers, in terms of promoting the issue, but also in terms of keeping the logistics tighter. So I personally love doing special issues, because it's much, much easier than dealing with individual papers, because when we are negotiating with a guest with a guest editor, for a special issue, the first thing that we tell them is, these are the deadlines, and you have to make sure that, once you bring together the scholars, that they agree to abide by those deadlines. And it has worked really, really, really well, because it's kind of a contract from the beginning, which you cannot do with individual papers. So I think that's also another advantage. But yeah, you're absolutely right about, the fear is, leaving individual papers out. And we have done, for example, in the issue that we just published last week, it was about COVID, but we were able to actually have a section, with non-COVID related articles where we included actually 2 really good manuscripts.
There was some fun when I was doing PA and taking the volunteered papers, going through them, teasing out a theme that seemed to unite them, and then writing an introduction for it.
Yes, that is part of the fun of it. I think of it as curating the work of the people who have sent us all different types of articles and seeing how they'll go together. That's for me, that's one of the most creative and enjoyable parts of putting the issues together.
Okay, so there's another question from Catherine. And I know there was some discussion about this in the chat, but if anybody else wants to weigh in, what is the reason for the institutional support from an academic institution?
So I think I answered that in the chat. So typically, and this was mentioned before, institutional support includes things like course releases to the editor to free up time to work on the publication, as well as a financial support for an assistant editor. So that's really important. Occasionally, and I know this was done in the past, a college or the institution would, might give a small summer stipend to the editor. It hasn't happened during our tenure as editor. And as I said before, it's increasingly difficult to get institutional support because colleges and universities' budgets are so very tight now.
Again, when I was working on PA, the advantages to the university, the institution, was to have a journal that was coming out of the department. So PA, and then I also did culture and agriculture. They felt that it was a thing of pride to be able to support it and say published at Wake Forest University.
Yeah, and that is definitely, that was kind of a factor that was very evident, for example, when we became editors, because this was the second time that ASHO was housed at USF, and that was great, and it was something that the university really liked. But unfortunately, with the budgetary problems, they said, we really have to cut down the support, for your assistant. So as Lisa mentioned, usually we don't even have support over the summer. We have editorial support in terms of, we have during the fall semester and spring semester. And then despite the fact that this is prestigious and it brings visibility to the university, you're absolutely right, Jean. But, because of budgetary constraints, they put that, unfortunately, that's where they cut their support.
I could see if there's the right kind of workplace, it'd be great. Like, I don't know, I've never worked at the VA, but we have lots of members who work at the VA, and apparently that's a place where anthropologists are highly valued. A place like that, maybe a potential editor could make an argument for having some time and potentially having some support in a place like that. So it's not that we require the institutional support, it's just that that's how the model has worked before. But I absolutely agree with what Nancy's saying too. At my university, we're seeing a reduction in support. I'm really lucky that my college pays for the editorial assistant but I don't know how long that's going to go on. So I think it could be visualized in lots of different ways, but that's just how it's worked up to now.
Okay, and Lance has a question. How often can a reviewer expect to be requested to review? And what is the turnaround time that you expect the reviewer to read and comment on the articles?
In general, I'm trying to remember. I think we asked people to provide the reviews in around 4 to 6 weeks. And again, it's very flexible, and some people are really wonderful and turn their reviews quickly, but other people take a little longer. So there's this, as the deadlines approach, you have to send, reminders. About the number of times, I mean, we have people, anthropologists, who absolutely are wonderful and would love to review. And we have a lot of people, I mean, I wouldn't say a lot, a few people who review a lot. And that's great. But again, we want to have diversity, right? We want to have many different voices, many different reviewers' perspectives. So I don't know. I don't think I can answer that question. I just know that, the part of, how long, is probably 4 to 6 weeks, because again, they're doing this, on a voluntary basis, and everybody is really, really busy. So, we try to give a little bit of leeway in terms of time.
For PA, we're not technically peer reviewed, but we do send articles out. I send articles out, especially if it's kind of outside of my area of expertise, or if I think there's something maybe a little bit problematic but I'm not sure what it is, those kinds of things when we want a second set of eyes. And it really depends. Sometimes it might be a volunteered paper and someone might have plenty of time to look at it. It's less often that we would say, you have to turn this right around. Often it's people who are members of our editorial team who I send things to, unless people have specific areas of expertise that are related that I know that might want to look at an article that maybe just needs a second set of eyes.
Lisa, you mentioned the editorial team, and we might comment about that. That's something that you don't have to edit the journal, but you could be part of the editorial team and begin to get a sense of what it's like to do the work and do some editing and just become part in that fashion.
Jean, I wish that is such a good idea. I wish that that we had thought of that for the beginning when everyone was still here. I don't know if we can email all the participants that were here earlier, but yes, I would love to. And we grow our editorial team. You can see some of our members there on the blog, but we do welcome people who would like to be part of that. And if you are, reach out and I can give you some more information and see if it's something that you'd be interested in doing.
Well, let's put it in the newsletter next issue.
That's true. And also it's the same thing for a show. We tried our editorial board. We tried to actually also bring people from outside of the United States, from different countries. And for that, for if you're a member of the editorial board, as part of your membership, you actually commit yourself to reviewing at least three manuscripts a year. And a lot of people do that. Unfortunately, some in the editorial board, may not have the time to do it. So that's actually one of the tasks that the new editor, for example, for a human organization will do, is to bring together a new editorial board and, kind of negotiate those things with, with people that you invite to be part of this board. So reviewers, that's true. It's another source of reviewers.
All right, and then Lenore also has another question. If you could make one major change to how things are done, what would it be? And she wants everyone to answer.
Well, if I could start, I think early view, I think that's really important, to get things out in a timely manner and give access to more people. And one thing related to that is just increase visibility. I mean, the competition is so keen. People just need to know, more people need to know about, HO and the kinds of research and scholarship that we publish.
Okay, just one. Can it be 1.5? I think number one would be open access, just having greater visibility and open access. However, figuring out how to do that so that our authors don't have to pay a huge fee, because that's the other part where we really want people to have the ability to publish with us without having a budget to do so. And so somehow making the journal more available without a large publication fee. And then my little half that I have to put in there is also figuring out how to support editorial assistants and things so that we don't have to rely on our places of work or our own universities for that, which would make it more open for people at universities that are not funded and for practitioners.
Well, it's possible that we might be able to come up with some kind of a fund that one could donate to that might be for editorial assistance. When I decide I'm going to pass on and go to my greater reward, that might be the thing that I want named after me.
I guess I'm, let me add my 2 cents here. I'm with Lisa and the rest that open access is very important. I would also, in the past, since COVID started, I've been working on a big grant with colleagues from STEM. And we manage to publish what they call abstract, something that is sort of foreign to us in the social sciences. So if we could add publishing abstracts to that is quick or forthcoming publications, that would be really nice. It will also be a teaser to those who would like to read the actual publication when it comes out. So it's just a thought out there.
I'm definitely still getting the lay of the land for a lot of things. But one thing that I would definitely like to see grow with PA is the creative submissions, because I think it's something that's really unique. I think it adds a lot to the field. So I'd like to see that take off a little more.
Another thing that I would like to see for HO is, I think somebody mentioned it before, is at least the ability to translate, to present, even if it's the abstracts in say Spanish. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources to do that. And that would be, I think a good way of, also increasing a little bit our, our readership, but also including people who speak other languages.
I think in general, expanding the audience is a wonderful way to look at an important value for the publications committee and the society's publications in the months and years ahead. I think, though we do a good job of reaching out to practitioners, we can do so much more. We can create publications that push out towards the membership in ways that become useful for folks who are outside of academic settings, particularly for folks who are in places outside of the United States as well. These are larger frontiers for our publications committee and for the society to continue to purposefully move into. And so we'd like to see that as well.
Okay, and then there was another question I missed one, I apologize. Vishal had asked, as editors, do you look down upon foul language in submissions, and do you prefer foul language not be used?
What? What language?
Foul language, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I'll say for PA, I think it would be okay if it was there for a reason, like if you were quoting someone and there was a reason why you would want to include that. That might be fine. So I think it would probably just depend on the context of when and where someone would. Okay, perfect. Yeah, the quote that was used. Yes, in a quote, then that would be okay. But I think that would be a conversation. If I got a submission and there was something that seemed off, or maybe there was foul language in a way that wasn't acceptable or professional, then I would have a conversation with the author. Is there a reason why you want to include this? Why is it, that kind of thing. We have those kinds of conversations a lot, but I think it would have to be there for a specific reason. And in a quote might be one of those reasons.
I think that's all the questions, unless anybody else has anything extra. I think I got them all.
All right, thank you, Quinn. Last call for questions. Anything else?
Not a question. I just wanted to add a comment that, if anybody's interested in, considering applying for the HR position, David and I are open to talking to you individually. We can arrange for, for a time to do a Zoom or Teams call and just answer any questions that you guys have.
Very good. President Pauliso, I see your hand up.
Yeah. I just want to thank the editors for taking time out of their busy schedules to talk with us tonight, and thank everyone who participated. I continue to learn a lot about the journals, and I think HO and PA and our newsletter are good publications, and I think that they will be better. And there certainly are lots of ways that they can be of more value to our members and beyond. So I think we have an exciting frontier. I want to thank Chad too for chairing the publications committee has expanded and is taking on some new tasks. So I think we are at a real pivotal point, and I'm optimistic given everything that I heard tonight. So thanks to all.
Very good. I'll add my thanks to everyone as well, including those who have joined us tonight and asked such wonderful questions. I've learned a lot. I expect that we all have in certain ways. So I bid you good evening. Wish you all a wonderful holiday season. And again, reach out with any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
For coming. Thank you. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Queen.
Mhm.